Spring Equinox 2021. Did we ever think we would make it here? So we made it through the winter. The robins are returning. It's just so exciting to get back out in the garden. So welcome for the Weekend Foundations class of 2021. I just want to say we're going to try to have as many videos as we can. We're going to show the progression of the garden. And for those that aren't in that weekend class, just welcome to Sacred Plant Traditions. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of jump right in and talk about the plants that we're going to see as they're emerging. And a lot of times this is the perfect time for the spring greens. So this, when we come back in April, is going to be the magnificent aromatic, the flaming azalea. And so if you can see in the front yard, you know, we are right downtown Charlottesville, right on the street, neighbors all around, and this is a botanical sanctuary. And so we have witch hazel and hornbeam and wild azalea, and we have many, many native trees, as well as a lot of native plants. And so we're going to be talking about United Plant Savers, Botanical Sanctuary, and we're going to do that a lot more in the back. So come on down, and I think the first one that we're really going to talk about is one of the first spring greens, and that is the chickweed. And the chickweed, oh, sorry, didn't know you were moving. So here is the incredible, beautiful, succulent chickweed. And it's one of the first in the spring. A lot of people with greenhouses are going to have chickweed underneath their planters. It's an edible. It's what's called an emollient or a demulcent. It's very mucilaginous. High levels. Kind of skipped lunch today. High levels of nutrients, minerals, and it grows in a mat. So what you'll be able to see is this mat-like growth. And the beautiful thing about chickweed is when you want to harvest, because how do you get all these loose pieces? What you want to do is you want to go down and you want to loosen it, because this is all coming from the center. And so what you want to do, it's like you're lifting her hair all around. All right, so a really nice way of harvesting chickweed is to loosen. A lot of times she'll root on the outside, or it'll be other plants, but you want to go around the base and loosen it. And then if you were harvesting, you would take more time, clear away the leaves, and all of this is really great medicine. And so you'd clear it out, clear the leaves, and then you would take scissors and just snip it off at the top, because like a spring green, it's nice and early, March 20th, some of this may come back. So all of this, you put it in salads, you can make a tea, you can dry it. Chickweed makes an incredible salve for dissolving boundaries. It's really wonderful for impetigo. And the energetics of chickweed is it clears heat. So whether that's the heat of a toxic snake bite, spider bite, anything that's hot and oozy, is when you're going to want to make a chickweed compress or a chickweed poultice. So it's great in the spring, and then when it gets warmer, it'll bolt. And so you want to get spring and then a fall harvest of it. In permaculture, there's the zones, the 5 zones of how to garden. Zone 5 is furthest from the house, and that's the wildlands. You leave that for the wildlife. Zone 1 and 2 is much closer to the home. So there's my kitchen right there. So right here is my close zones. So here's parsley, here's some lavender, rosemary, here's thyme, So you can see all of this is kind of leggy, needs to be cut back. It's springtime. So what we'll do is we'll come back in and we'll cut back a lot of this thyme, and we'll still harvest it. Because as you're bruising, in herbal medicine it's called bruising, not a very kind word for our beautiful sentient beings. But with these aromatic plants like thyme and lavender, all through the winter you can come out and you can harvest them because they're just so pungent. So the volatile oils we'll be talking about, you know, they would use sage and thyme and these culinaries to stuff the turkey and use it for meat. And this wasn't just for flavoring, this was for preservatives because they didn't have refrigeration, and so these are antioxidants. So this whole new world of antioxidants, stress, stopping that oxidative process, which we'll get into deeper, but that's what these volatile oils are. So even in the dead of winter, coming out and taking some of this beautiful rosemary, you know why it's rosemary for remembrance, because it's just so clarifying. And so volatile oils lift, right? You smell the oils, they kind of bring oxygen, they're oxygenating, they kind of give you inspiration. So that's a lot of the chemistry. That's the phytochemistry of the plant that we're really going to look at. How do we use our senses? So if you were here, I'd pass you some rosemary. I'd invite you to take some off. And for those that live close, you are more than welcome to wander the gardens. Mondays and Thursday, Angel's here, but just come and get to know the plants. But this is a great thing to be doing right now before you might go shopping for herbs for your garden. So again, parsley, I don't cook with lavender that much at all, going to be honest, at all. But rosemary, I use it a lot for, again, clearing heat. It's a beautiful medicine for pink eye. Make a compress, make a strong tea, and do a washcloth, and it clears pink eye beautifully, really well. So let's go back to look at the Native Plant Rescue Garden. Here, I'll just stop here for a nanosecond. And so here, oh, look at all the yellow. This is calendula. And so calendula is a beautiful healing for skin, wound healing, anti-infective. Just a powerful, powerful medicine for lymphatics, cleansing lymphatics. And so it self-seeds. So I'm sort of standing in the calendula bed. But you can see that these are volunteers. And so, you know, with calendula seeds, this is what we sent you. We sent you holy basil seeds and we sent you calendula. And those calendula seeds are so cool because they're big and you can really see them. And we'll talk about you planting them in the soil tomorrow with Angel, but you can direct seed them. So whenever we do gardening with calendula, we always kind of relegate a certain part of the garden, and it can self-sow, and it kind of becomes, it's not a perennial, calendula is an annual, but these are kind of looking a little perennial. But that's the sunny, and my fingers are kind of sticky. And that's that resin of calendula. That's the antiviral, really strong, potent medicine. And resins really are pretty strong like that. Okay, so as the sign says, this is a United Plant Savers Botanical Sanctuary. I had the great honor of being president of UPS for 3 years, and I was on the board for many other years. And so Rosemary Gladstar, 25 years ago, started United Plant Savers because she realized, wow, here are these thousands of people coming to these conferences. I'm at the California School. I'm teaching herbal medicine. We're going to need to replant these plants. So United Plant Savers is dedicated to the preservation and protection of native medicines. Not agrimony, not motherwort, not yarrow, but those mostly woodland medicines. And we focus a lot on black cohosh and ginseng and golden seal, but there's peyote, Hawaiian sandalwood. So, you know, it's all across the United States and even Canada. So what we did here was a couple of years ago, we had the Mid-Atlantic pipeline. You know, that wretched beast coming through Southern Virginia into West Virginia. And it looked like it was just really a done deal. So what we organized, or other people organized, I really want to give credit to Blackberry Farm and these other folks for organizing it. But we went a couple of days and we did a pipeline plant rescue, because it's almost as though they took a drone and they went over the most magnificent parts of the Allegheny Mountains, and they were the richest. And I mean, we might have been in an area just this size for 2 whole days, and there was more plant, more blue cohosh, black cohosh than we ever could have rescued. So this is another thing with development, with habitat loss. It's rescuing these endangered plants, and then we gave them away. We planted them here. I looked on Thursday ahead of time to see if any of them are coming up yet, but not yet. And the interesting thing is we are under a grove of walnut trees. And so in Toby Hemingway's book, Gaia's Garden, which we highly recommend for home permaculture, he talks about what to plant around a black walnut guild, because there's a chemical in black walnut called juglone. And juglone is what the medicine is. It's anti-parasitic, antifungal. We use it for ringworm. Super strong cleansing, giardia, really potent medicine. But the medicine is also what's in the leaves, and so what that does is that discourages a lot of plants to grow underneath it. So if you've got walnuts, it might not be the best place to put your vegetable garden, but I gotta tell you, plant relationships are so profound that we have been able to grow almost anything, things that shouldn't be growing under a walnut, to grow. So a lot depends on your relationship, but just also really understanding that walnuts, they have huge value as a tree, as timber. Some people like to plant them for their children, their grandchildren, because they're not super old growing, but it's a way of investing in the future, because walnut wood is just so precious and so beautiful. But the way that you want to look, it's called the drip line. So if you want to look at, so those branches, that far branch that is going behind the classroom, that's called the drip line. So the whole idea, and actually even higher up with those other branches, you go to the furthest away branch, and then you imagine rain coming down, and all under that is kind of fair game for the juglone. Just be mindful of that. Just don't plant a walnut right by your veggie garden. The interesting thing is where this pergola is, we've moved around a lot in this backyard, but where this pergola was a beautiful vegetable garden, and so the roots of the walnut trees go far. So you just really want to be mindful of that, but that's really great medicine. The green hulls are the medicine. So here we're going to come to one of our favorites. And this is what you tasted this morning. This was Urtica dioica. This is the nettles. So nettles, right now it's springtime, so they're still really baby. There are stings on these as I'm touching the leaves. I am getting a bit of a sting. We left some of the stalks so that you'd be able to see. You can't see the seeds. We'll be talking more about nettle seed medicine, great for the kidneys. But essentially this whole area will be growing really, really high in nettles. And nettles likes it wet. So one of the permaculture aspects is, you know, before you plant anything, you kind of arrive at your land and you observe what way does the wind blow? Is this a windy area? Is this a wet area? So if you kind of look up towards the garden and if you look up towards the street, are you able to do that, Lauren? Thank you. So you can't tell it a lot, but there's a slight incline to the land. So what that means is we put really dry plants up in the front yard because when it rains, one, there's a lot of trees and trees require a lot of water, and then it's drier up there, so when it rains it naturally drains. And nettles really loves it wet. You know, it loves to grow along streams. It really likes it humusy, manure, super nitrogen-rich soil. So we kind of put it back by the wood pile and the scrappy area where the wood will decompose and kind of really give it a lot of nutrition there. So these will get really, really tall. This is how tall, you know, the nettles will get. And we generally can get a couple of harvests a year. So a while ago, I used to host the Gaia Gathering for Women. For 10 years, we hosted it, and with Susanna and other great herbalists. And oh, I'm getting a little ertification. Kind of feels good. It feels like spring for me because it's great. I don't have arthritis in my hands, but the whole idea of nettling, you know, the nettle leaf, we'll see it as it gets bigger. It's got a little hook, a little needle, and at the end of that is formic acid. And so the formic acid gets injected into the skin, and that's what causes kind of the rash. But really what it is just increase in blood. It's the blood circulation. So that's great for arthritis, and people would, you know, put their hands in nettles and put, you know, kind of do switches of nettles just to increase the blood flow, because the Chinese say ice is for dead people. So we have joint pain and we're always icing things, and what we really want to do is we want to bring blood, because pain is stagnation. You're going to hear me say that a lot, because if you really figure that out, the pain is stagnation. Instead of icing can drive it deeper. You might want to put cool claws on it. You might want to do that initially, but then you really want to get the blood there, because the blood is what has the healing wisdom. It has all the chemistry our body needs as anti-inflammation. So so back to the Gaia Women's Gathering. So we had 100 women. Our beloved sister Rachel, who's here with us, was a magnificent high priestess at one. We don't like to say keynotes. We like to say other words of the grand one who holds the space, but we did this beautiful homage to nettles and sang beautiful songs. But we make nettle soup. And so out of this small patch here, we made soup for 100 women. So for me, nettles is about food. And you would make nettle soup just as you would make spinach. You know, if you don't want dairy, you add potatoes. You know, any recipe that is calling for greens, you can substitute fresh nettles. And the heat is what will take the sting away. You know, if you don't want to get stung, you put long sleeves on, you put gloves on. There are lots of stories that if you talk to the nettles and if you go in a certain attitude, it'll be less stings. I've been living with nettles for 30 years and I've had all kinds of different experiences with her. So this will come up with nettles, and so you can cut the first harvest and then let it regrow. Every successive cutting has less medicine, but you're still getting incredible food. We make nettle pesto, and the heat of the blender is enough to take away the sting. So either drying it to have the formic acid dissipate, steaming it, cooking it, or putting it in the blender. The heat from the blender will take away a lot of that sting. But we love our nettles. Nettles are we. We love nettles. Nettles are we. Right, Rachel? Okay, so let's see. Here we are at elder. Wait till you see this in June. It's going to be absolutely astounding. So when we go further up in the garden, we're going to look back. And so these elders are incredibly tall. And you can see the new green shoots that are coming out. And we thinned this a lot. Meg really thinned it. And then you can see that there's so many nettles. It's just spreading. It's spreading. So we're happy to do giveaways, to pass along the elder, but it does really like to be cut back. We didn't cut it back for the longest time, and obviously it's the white bloom and then the berries that you want to harvest, and if they're up there, you're just feeding the birds, and that's a good thing. We got to take care of our wildlife as well. And I just saw a hawk. So, so here's elder. Elder flower is incredible for fevers. It's what's called a diaphoretic. And a diaphoretic means dia is through, phoresis is sweating. So a diaphoretic promotes sweating. So when you have a cold or a fever, what you want to do is you want to move that heat out, and you want to use diaphoresis. And so elderflower is a really gentle diaphoretic, but it's also an antiviral. Not just the berry, but the flower is an antiviral as well. The berries get all the hype, and everybody's making elderberry syrup and the world's running out of it. But it is so, so easy to grow. So it's growing, it kind of hopped over the fence, and it's over moving down into the woodland. And then when we did a permaculture installation over there by the condos, all along the edges of the woodlands, we planted elder. So we're just spreading the good word of elder, and it's really beautiful. And it does like sun. It can grow on the edge. But the beautiful thing with elder is you can see it spreading by runner. But another way is if I were to cut the elder at this point, I would take off these branches, and you could take this branch, put it in the ground, make sure you water it, stake it, and you have to remember to keep watering it. This would grow into an elder. So you want to plant two. If you buy one elder, you're going to need another one for pollination. So if you ever come and get cuttings here, you need to get two cuttings. But this is Sambucus nigra, and there's also Sambucus canadensis, and they're the botanical names. Red elder grows on the West Coast. I have seen it here. In fact, I've seen it at AMI over in on the mountain there. And it's red elder. And there's some toxicity with those berries. Elder leaves, Stephen Buhner came out with a protocol for COVID using elder leaves. He's a dear friend, and I love his research. I dried some. I never used them. They're not really used a lot in tradition. I kind of stay with traditional uses. There was concern about the elderberries. You might have heard it provoking a cytokine storm, bringing on more inflammation during COVID. And that really was an erroneous assessment of using the elder. Yes, it does stimulate and promote your body's immune response, but it just got the bad rap. And when somebody is in cytokine storm, they should not be taking elder syrup. They need to be, in an ICU. Cytokine storm is very, very serious. And so elder, it's very unlikely that elderberry was the culprit there. So these are going to be beautiful white umbel flowers. Umbel means umbrella in the Umbelaceae family. It does have a poisonous look-alike, water hemlock. There aren't many things out here, at least on the East Coast, that are going to kill you. Water hemlock will. So when you're looking at black haw and elder, just really make sure you know that it is an elder. Water hemlock is pretty prolific around here, so it is something to look for. And if we see one in our travels, we'll, take a picture or show it to you, but it has this really interesting red, kind of purpley red mottled stem. And that whenever you see purple or blue, that can be a doctrine of signature of poison or a neurotoxin. Not all the time. So the doctrine of signatures arose from the 15th century, really alchemically. Really, it was Paracelsus, who was this bombastic, brilliant, renegade physician who really went outside of the main medical field, studied with Romani, studied with Egyptians, and he was really brilliant. He was sort of the beginning of homeopathy in a way. And so what he really brought forward was the doctrine of signatures, and that's the archetypal shape of the plant. So if the plant looks like a heart, it has some vibrational element, some remedy for the heart. And so, now this is, that's just this nice kind of turn of the century, 500 years ago. But there's a lot of medicine that really comes through doctrine of signatures. And through the year, when we look at mullein, when we look at other plants, we're really going to see how this plays out. Kind of cool. Very cool. So here's our elder. And so hopefully one day you'll be sitting here with your classmates having lunch, drinking tea in the shade of the elder. So we're going to come to coltsfoot now. And it took the longest time for me to get coltsfoot, but it's a roadside weed. And the interesting thing is a lot of people see it up front, they see it and they're like, oh, it's dandelion, dandelion's here. But it's different than dandelion. It's called, the botanical name is Tussilago farfara, and tussive is cough. So one of the differences when you get your loop, when you got your loops, well, we sent you loops. So get your loops out now with the flowers, and what you're going to see on the coltsfoot petals, they're square at the end as versus pointed like the dandelion. And so in, 11th, 12th century, people didn't read. Reading was a class privilege in a way. And so lots of the guilds and artisans, there was a picture of, there was a loaf of bread or an anvil, or, this is where that guild or shop was. And so for the apothecary, they would put a picture of colt's foot on it. And that was always such an incredible story, saying that this must be a profound herb at this time. And if you think about the beginning of moving into an urban area and less healthful lifestyle, moving from rural into more populated, into rural, and that just all the pulmonary conditions that would be present. So another name, you can tell which gender's naming these plants. It's called son before father. Or is it father before son? We'll call it daughter before mother as well. But what's odd is colt's foot, the flower comes before the leaves. And so that's why they call it, I guess the father's the leaf. Usually leaves come first, right? And leaves like juice up the plant and get it all nourished, because the flower is the orgasm, the flower is the reproduction, and that's where the seed is. So you want to put lots of juice into the flower to make the seed for the proliferation of the species. So colt's foot comes before the leaf. The leaf looks like a colt's foot. And if you turn it over, we'll see it next month, you turn it over and it's pubescent, it's hairy. But what's cool about this, and you can really, this is a real clear differentiation, you'll see what's called a bracts, B-R-A-C-T, bracts going up the stem. So the medicine is the leaf and the flower. We don't use the root. But a lot of times they'll come all together. Colt's foot loves to grow along roads, gravelly roads. When I lived in the country, it was always along the road, but it will take out toxins. So gravel roads, they spray them with chemicals so that there's not a lot of dust. And so you just have to be careful where you harvest colt's foot. Make sure the water's clean. Again, you'll see it along roadsides, but you might want to move in and get it where it might not be so close to the road. There's a 50-foot rule of harvesting, that you want to go 50 feet off the road. And it depends on how well traveled the road is. If it's I-81, I drive up north on my way to visit family on I-81 near Scranton. I'm telling you, the St. John's wort, there you could get tons and tons and tons of St. John's wort. There's no way I'm going to harvest medicine. I think it's there for us. I think it's there to keep us calm. Okay. All right. So this is sweetgrass. And I don't know, well, actually, all of you, by the end of these 9 months, really need to read Robin Wall Kimmerer's, if you haven't already, A Braiding Sweetgrass. Just profound. She's just really opened up so many worlds for us. So this is the sweetgrass that she's talking about in her book, and it's kind of taken over this part of the garden. And so what we do is we leave this circle here, and we just invite any plants of magic, anybody of magic or special plants, we invite you here. They come anywhere in the garden, and we kind of live under this illusion that, oh, here's our sacred circle. They just show up anyway. But it is interesting to see who comes. Really pay attention to the patterns of your plants. Don't take anything for granted. Just really begin to be observant of who's where, whether it's a city park, an urban garden, your backyard, even if you have an apartment. There's parking lots. There's such an interesting relationship that we'll be talking about later. So anyway, so we're going to cut back. We wanted to leave this, the higher, kind of last year's growth. Wow. It's a vanilla scent. It's absolutely beautiful. So we're going to clear this out, and you can see the green is coming underneath. It loves water. It really loves to grow in the northern Abenaki region. The Mohicans, the Abenakis, it grows in Michigan, a lot of wetlands. So it's kind of odd that it's taking over here. Unfortunately, we do have to weed it out of the pathway, but the hope is in October, when the sweetgrass is high, you'll be able to come, and what we do is we sit down and we, harvest some and in a really beautiful way, and then we braid the sweetgrass. And so that's the whole medicine, there's a whole prayer. The braiding becomes a prayer. And so when it's fresh, there's really not a scent like rosemary or thyme. It's when it's dried that you can really smell the sweetgrass. So all of this is, it's a little faint, it's gone through the winter, but it's just this beautiful kind of amaretto vanilla smell, and it's very soft when you burn it. This is where we will grow our desert sage, and Angel sent you her ceremonial sage that we'll be burning tonight. We never wildcraft or harvest. We don't want to buy smudge sticks anymore. It's really endangering the native sages, the native desert sages. So every single culture has burnt herbs. Ireland, Norway, any place on the planet that's had aromatic herbs, they've always burnt herbs. Smoke is the way you carry your prayer skyward. Smoke is very clearing. Smoke is very prayerful. So you can burn herbs, and that's not appropriating a native tradition. The Celts burnt, Colombians burn. I mean, that's just what people have done. You throw a plant on a fire, and when an aroma comes out, that's how these things were discovered. But we do buy at Forest Green Farm. She grows ceremonial sage. We go buy a plant, we plant it, it gets big and bushy, and it really is resinous. Desert plants need to have a desiccant. They not a desiccant, the opposite. They really need a lot of protection so that they aren't desiccated. So there's a lot of resin in their leaves and a lot of aromatic oils to prevent from the high heat. And that's why it smells so profound. So we'll be braiding sweetgrass in October. And if you're not here, we're going to send it to you. We're going to send you it, and you can braid it. That's what we did last year as well. So not to worry about that. And then here's our garlic. We planted the garlic last fall, and we have little patches of the garlic coming up. And then behind us here, we left the skeleton of fennel. And fennel really grows super easily. You can guerrilla plant. I have squatter friends in New York City who would do guerrilla planting in different areas, different lots. People are really getting into gardening now and community projects. But the beautiful thing about fennel is it's very easy to grow, and the seeds are easy to harvest. And they might have all fallen off, but these are the fennel seeds. I guess they're all gone. Here's a few that are for digestion. Yeah, they're kind of gone, but more is coming up. And fennel is a great herb for digestion, and it's for flavoring. In Indian restaurants, oh my God, it smells so good. So hard not to have you all here wafting away. So in Indian restaurants, a lot of times at the cash register, they'll have those kind of wacky colored fennel seeds. They're covered in candy, and they're pink and blue. And I'm sure post-COVID, we're not going to be having open containers of food like that. post-COVID, there's a dream. We will get past this. But it's for digestion. So what we do is we have just little dishes of fennel out, and you just kind of pick them and eat them, or if after you ate, you kind of have a little indigestion, just chewing them. Just really, really yummy. And then underneath the fennel, we have our rain barrel hose. Is the mullein here. Mullein is one of our great favorites. We let mullein come and be at home. So again, all through the year, we're going to come back to the plant. You're going to see them as they grow. But the beautiful rosette right now with mullein, you don't know, mullein is a biennial, and a biennial means the plant's here for 2 years. So an annual just makes tons of seeds, and it wants to self-proliferate, but it doesn't have much of a root, because why put a root down if you're only here for a year? Biennial are here for 2 years, and so they put lots of energy into their seed, and the second year is when they send the stalk up. Burdock root. If anybody knows burdock, where in the 40s, was it 40s that a French designer designed Velcro from the design of burdock, because those seeds have such an intense way of clinging on to dog hair or pants or gloves or something when you're outside, and that's evolution. You know, that's to be carried. They want to be carried by animals or moving. So with burdock, the first year root is ideally what you want. With mullein, the first year leaves at the end of the first year. So we'll come and we'll see which one of these are first year, second year. The second year is going to send a stalk up, and that stalk will be laden with beautiful yellow flowers. And those mullein flowers are antimicrobial, and they're for earaches, and they have other uses. Mullein root is now being used a lot for bladder and pelvic instability and congestion. But the leaves are just profound for the lungs. So COVID, mullein was in every single formula, just clearing and strengthening, and it's such a powerful plant. When you see the stalk, when you see it, it's like got this big, beautiful basal rosette. Those leaves get really big, and the stalk goes up, and it's just like magnificent. And that's the energy of the plant. It's just very, very supportive. Lots of fear with COVID and pneumonia and bronchitis. So we're going to be loving up our mullein. And we let it kind of take over the garden just a little bit. Oh, here's an interesting one we left. So you can't really see much on this, and I don't know. This is stevia. Gets beautiful little green leaves. Yeah, not a lot of scent. Wonder if there's scent. No, you know, it's that sweet, it's the sugar kind of substitute. I'm not a fan, it's a little bitter. I'd rather have honey or something like that. But for diabetics, for people that just really don't want the sugar, stevia is a great alternative. But you can't grow it, and you can dry the leaves, and then you can powder it. Or some people put it in a tincture, or they put drops in things to sweeten. But yeah, this is one that you can definitely grow yourself. Here, I'll just show you this. This is meadowsweet. And meadowsweet, if you can see the shape of that leaf, and we'll see it, oops, that's always fun when the, that's okay, we'll just film on over it. Meadowsweet, oh, it's in one of the digestive teas that you all are gonna make tomorrow. It's an anti-inflammatory for the gut. And you can't really see it here, but there are these kind of large leaves, small leaves, large leaf, small leaf pattern. Agrimony does that. Sorry, leaf. But it tastes like tea berry. It tastes like winterberry. And that's the taste of salicylic acid. And salicylic acid is aspirin. So you don't want to be tasting plants that you don't know. But a lot of the salicylate, the anti-inflammatory plants, will have that familiar taste. And we'll see meadowsweet get larger. That meadowsweet tastes good. So that is kind of obnoxious. But I'm going to talk about this milk thistle away from the heat pump. So if you can see this prickly, beautiful rosette and see those white veinations in the thistle leaves, we'll go further up here and talk about that medicine. Here it's kind of coming on more. Ooh, robin. Robin, robin. Okay. So we don't, oh, look, here's another elder. It just kind of showed up out of, from back there, but this is exciting. So yeah, with a milk thistle is, I think it's an annual actually. I think milk thistle is an annual, like the bull thistles in the field. But that thistle will get very, very wide. A stalk will go up and magnificent purple thistle-like flowers will come out. And then those flowers produce seeds. And I can't tell you the medicine that milk thistle seed has provided for me and my practice. It's all about the liver. It's all about liver regeneration, hepatic functioning, detoxing. Matthew Wood tells great herbal stories, and he had a friend with Amanita mushroom, the poisonous mushroom toxicity cleared with milk thistle. I had an infant that was given infant Tylenol, but had a hepatic reaction, and the blood temperature went down to 93, and I was middle of the night, and I go to the mother's house, and we gave the infant milk thistle and then nursed, and then he threw up, and his body, I mean, he looked, it was kind of touch and go there. So it's profound in increasing the glutathione pathway. And that glutathione pathway is what our liver does to really break down metabolites. You know, it has to be a number of passes. And one of the reasons why Amanita is so poisonous is that it doesn't get conjugated the first pass, and therefore stays a toxin. Anybody on meds, so many people with, you know, just our environment. And when we get into April's talking about the digestive system and liver and all that good stuff, we'll be visiting milk thistle. So what's interesting about milk thistle, though, is you had to be socially responsible because it's wind, the seeds travel really easily by wind. And if you've ever had a rural farm or the field, you know those thistles are really gnarly. And farmers don't like them because it's not good for the cattle. So I have never had this milk thistle show up in neighbors' gardens. I know all my neighbors. I'm walking the hood all the time. So I know that it's not spreading. But if you plant the milk thistle, just be really mindful. I mean, you want to see it flower and you want to harvest the seed. But harvesting milk thistle seed is treacherous. I mean, I did it because I had to do it. I'm an herbalist and I love it and I want to know what that's like. But the amount of time of, you know, pulling apart the seeds from that really prickly flower head, you can see why organic milk thistle costs a lot of money, and as it should, because we really need to support our farmers. This is one plant that I use as a standardized extract. and we'll talk more about that. But milk thistle I really like in capsule form as a standardized extract because the seed covering is really hard. And in order to penetrate, you need a high percentage alcohol. And we'll talk more about medicine making, but you need grain alcohol to really get into the seed and pull out the constituents. So somebody with liver, if you're helping somebody with liver health or hepatitis or on a lot of pharmaceuticals, you don't want them to be taking grain alcohol every day. So that's another reason I go to the standardized. But we'll be watching the milk thistle grow. So these little yellow flowers here, these are wood poppies. These are native plants. They kind of take over. So if you do have shade or woodland areas and you don't want to be weeding, the woodland poppies are really beautiful. They were used for medicine. I don't use them other than in landscaping. The one thing I didn't mention on the pyramid tripod with yeah, back there. So what we have growing up, that is wild yam. And wild yam is a great climber. It loves to climb. I love southern states. I should have bought 10 of those bamboo structures. They were like $12, but you can craft them. And you would think COVID time I'd be crafty, but I was writing. But maybe this year, maybe if it's still a lot slower. But certain plants really love to climb, and you'll see wild yam in the woods climbing anything out there. And it's such a beautiful climber. So as the season progresses, you're going to see all of this is golden seal. There's going to be wild ginger in here. There's ginseng here, lots of natives. This is a botanical sanctuary. Part of United Plant Savers, I don't think I really finished that. One of the main missions of United Plant Savers is to help people set up botanical sanctuaries. And the botanical sanctuary is super easy. We run sanctuaries all across the country. All you have to do is promise that you'll use it for education and you can have friends twice a year. And you tell them about native plants as well as pollinators and medicine. But for me, these sanctuaries are really about seed repositories. And what I mean by this is, you know, we have that beautiful seed bank in Norway. It's not by Monsanto. It's by very thoughtful and progressive people wanting to save seeds just in case. But what happens is these seeds are in, you know, well-controlled, humidified. You know, there's grain from Africa. There's Siberian trees. But they're not moving through climate change. So say those seeds have been in there for 20 years, and I imagine that they're replacing them. But for me, our botanical sanctuaries are those seed repositories. So I'm collecting the seeds of this golden seal and this ginseng because they're really adapting. So you'll learn more about United Plant Savers as we go through. But the sanctuaries, look up on a map. Maybe there's a sanctuary near you. You have no idea. But there's a number here in Virginia. Wait, I think this is elder. Or, you know what? I think this is more hellebore. That's more hellebore. Yeah, this is interesting. Are we rolling? Yeah. Okay, so this is this is a hellebore, but this is what's called putty root. And putty root is actually an orchid. And it is said that it was part of the chinking. They call it putty root because it used to be huge abundance in these mountains. And so that when there was chinking and log cabins, they would take the putty root and they would make the kind of the mortar for cabins. And it was a kind of a was going to say adjuvant. I have vaccines on my mind. It was a fixative in some ways. It would really hold that together. And then here's a beauty, a little beauty here. This is called, they call it dead nettle, but it doesn't like to be called dead nettle. It likes to be called bee nettle. And it's an astringent, and it's square stem. So square stems are mints. And so many of the plants are astringents, like the asters. Asters are coming on board now. A lot of people love them for allergies. Jim McDonald has really brought them to our attention. But most plants have tannins, and tannins are an antimicrobial function for the plant, and that's why when you make herb tea, it turns brown, mostly when it's dried. Green, fresh tea, you know, keeps the chlorophyll, but when you dry plants, most of our teas are brown because of the tannic acids. And so, you know, with a lot of times you'll see lots of the weeds, a lot of the common ones. You'll see astringent often, and that's why, because tannins are meant for the plant's kind of immune defense. So we see we have a lot of chickweed, and something that might look like chickweed but isn't. This is cress, and this is called land cress, and it's an edible, and it's super peppery. Kind of really yummy and peppery. You'd never sit down to a whole salad of land cress, but you can add it into chickweed or dandelion greens. And then, oh gosh, it really is yummy. They're so pungent. Kind of like watercress. You know, it's got that peppery, pungent feel of that. These are all hellebores over here. And these are the Lenten rose, the hellebores, and they spread. You've got to really love hellebores if you have them. And then here is what we were looking for, but there's just not enough. We'll find more of it. We were looking for cleavers. Lots of chickweed. So chickweed loves moisture, and we had a really wet winter and a great spring. So that's really good for those water-loving plants. More garlic. I knew I saw it somewhere. All right, so these are really, really baby yarrows. Here's a yarrow plant with chickweed on it. Here's another yarrow. Let me get this leaf. So yarrow, Achillea millefolium, is named after Achilles and the thousand leaves, millefolium. And this is what's called a vullinary. And a vullinary is an herb that heals wounds. And we use yarrow for protection. A lot of people, when we were supporting folks in the protests, that were doing a lot of frontline work, we would give them yarrow essence or yarrow to carry with them because it really is protecting, helping with boundaries. It's, Matt Wood calls it the master of the blood, where it's blood moving, and yet it's a hemostat. It'll stop bleeding. So it has this incredible intelligence. The salve that you all got, yarrow oil was in the salve. Yarrow is a great hemostat. So one time I was making a jewelweed salve for a friend, and I was in a hurry, and there was a Cuisinart, and I was blending up the jewelweed to put in a bath, and I reached in a little too quick, and I cut my finger like down to the bone. And that's what Matt says. It's for cuts and wounds that go to the bone. And so I looked at it and I thought, yeah, stitches, definitely need stitches, but I wasn't going to go to the hospital. So I went out and I got some yarrow, chewed it up, and put it on. And I'm telling you, not only did the bleeding stop really quickly, but it's got an anodyne. So when you chew the leaf and you keep it on your gum, then your gum is numb for a while. And that's an ano is against, dynia is pain. It's an anodyne, it's against pain. So yarrow, you just always want to travel with it. I would travel to Central America a lot in the good old days, and I would take dried yarrow. And dried yarrow, it doesn't act as quickly, but it is a great hemostat. So it's profound. I've never used yarrow tincture. I've always just had the plant. Did the same thing with the dried plant. Just chewed it up, moistened it with my saliva, and packed the wound with that. You want to clean that out after a while. You don't want to, well, I've known a lot of people that have been hiking and pretty bad gashes and they leave it in 24/7. It just is harder to debride and get that out. So for any bleeding, menstrual bleeding, obviously internal bleeding, that's not something we want to be dealing with in the herbal office. But Achillea, it said that he was held by his heel and dipped in yarrow tea. But it's also, we learned a lot of herbal medicine from, or European medicine from soldiers. And because they needed bodies, like, they would patch people up and they would just put the body back in war, and they were traveling. They'd go on these incredible campaigns and they would have doctors and they would really have to carry their materia medica as well as learning all the medicine. So the military physicians were really a great source, and they wrote it down. And they would keep different notes. And so Achillea millefolium is that wound wart, really great for, and it moves blood. So whenever there's bruising and what's called stasis means to stop. Whenever there's bruising, you can put yarrow or take it internally because you want to move that debridement. You don't want that stagnation to hold. Bitter, it's bitter, bitter, bitter. Incredible diaphoretic. Like probably, other than bone set, I think yarrow is the most potent diaphoretic. So if you, adults kind of lose their fevering mechanism, kids can fever super high. As we age, we kind of lose that, but it's really good to break a sweat. So if you got a cold or a flu and you want to push it out, you make a strong yarrow infusion or a yarrow tea. Take that to the bath with you, draw a really nice warm bath and drink that yarrow tea, and you're really going to break into a sweat. Make sure that you can bundle up and rinse off and then get into bed after that. But yarrow is a great diaphoretic. And it grows super easy, and it grows all around Virginia really abundantly, as well as actually anywhere. I don't know many bioregions where yarrow can't grow. All right, so I have to introduce you to a major staff member. This is Surf. Surf, say hello to the class. Anyway, so I know this isn't the same that you all were hoping for with that direct experience with the garden. But what I really, really encourage, I mean, I never went to an herb school. I just spent hours and hours hiking in the mountains with my guidebooks. And I'm not just saying this to say, oh, well, go do it on your own, but I'm saying go out there. Get the good books, get Peterson. We're really going to go through, how to identify with Newcomb's Wildflower Guide when our botanist comes on to look at that. But don't be frightened. I mean, I learned by just having picture books like in the bathroom or just picture books all around. And I would just look at them over and over. And then when I would be out there, I'd be like, oh, that does look familiar. I think I know that one. So a lot of the wildflower books go by the flower. So right now, if the leaves are just coming out, they're not really helpful, but it is obviously the easiest way to first meet a plant with a flower. Go to nurseries, but when you're buying medicinals for your garden, make sure that you get the botanical name. Like there's a big, beautiful ornamental St. John's wort that'll take over your garden, and that's not the medicinal St. John's wort that you want. So if spring fever's got you and you're heading out to nurseries and buying some plants, make sure that they have the botanical name. Tons and tons of hybrids out there. There's some like triple-headed orange echinaceas that are absolutely bizarro looking, and you know, it all is the perennial of the year, you know, the more beautiful garden. But just really go to your Materia Medica and make sure that you are buying the medicinal plants and the name. Again, Forest Green Farm. The directions are in your curriculum. Edible Landscape is in Nelson County, and they have pomegranates and fig trees and passion flower, and they have amazing fruit trees, edible landscaping. And there's more and more good nurseries, but you really want to make sure you're going to try to get a really good stock. And supporting local, definitely supporting local. So anyway, I will see you soon, and thanks a lot for coming along.